you can see. So if you want to advance, Brian. I'm Todd. This is Vince. We're both with the Parsec team, and we'll stick around towards the end to answer any questions at the end of the session, or we'll be available afterwards. But it is my honor to present Brian Walker. He's a 25-year veteran of Microsoft, and he is our main presenter today. And on our personal note, I'm proud of Brian for being a 9-year Little League coach with his son. Brian, take it away.
Thank you, Todd. So, yeah, Brian Walker. Why am I here anyway? In May, Xbox Research and Parsec co-wrote an article about how Parsec has helped Xbox Research in our playtesting abilities. And my colleague Dan Gunn and I said a few choice things. Dan starts it off with, Parsec was a total lifesaver. And then, not to be outdone, I threw in, using Parsec has taken us beyond where we ever thought we could go. And Parsec has made remote playtesting efficient, reliable, and more secure. Parsec is going to allow us to scale in scenarios we've never been able to before. Yeah, all true. But apparently when you say really nice things in an article, they invite you to come and speak at the conference, so that's why I'm here. And I'm glad to be here. Thank you for coming to witness it. So I'm here to tell you about our relationship with Parsec, Xbox Research and Parsec, how it came to be, what we did, why we did it, and how we did it. So in order to do that, to set up the story, we're going to talk about a little bit about our team in Xbox Research, how we operate, how we transitioned from 100% in-person playtesting studio to also include remote playtesting, and how Parsec has been a huge part of that. And hopefully at the end, there's some practical tips that may relate to you that you can take back to your studios as you leave. So what is Xbox Research? Well, we've been around for over 20 years. Since the beginning of Xbox was first released, we're strategically centered inside Xbox. And if you think about gaming at Microsoft, our team is involved with it. This is a picture of one of our early play test pods. You can see the nice, powerful PCs down there, and the original Xbox, a couple of CRT monitors. Well, that was the deal back then. This team has been around, but this is a more modern look. We have a nice, much more powerful gaming PC, the Series X, and all the accessories needed for a great gaming experience. So let's talk about the researchers on our team. And this is a quote from Randy Pagulayan, who's the GM of Xbox Research. We have 34 researchers on our team, and we focus on driving ongoing engagement and enjoyment for our products and developers. Our researchers have PhDs in cognitive science and psychology and neuroscience, and so their work demands academic rigor that needs to show up in our research methods that manifests in consistency and quality in what we do. These researchers are rigorous, they're creative, they're risk takers, they're engineers, they're product makers. And on the operations side, which is my team, this quote comes from the industry about what operations is and research operations is. And most people are familiar with the term operations. You have business operations that carry out the core functions of business. Retail operations might do the same for a retailer. And in research operations, we help carry out the core functions to produce research. And this talks about the support that research operations offers. Yes, but we also like to think ours amplifies and extends the ability of a researcher to apply quality research at scale. And to do this, it requires specific engineering and professionals on our team, from recruiting participants to managing the software and tools that go into our research systems. And of course, we have labs. And here's just some pictures from our labs back home in Redmond, Washington, USA. We have a nice place where our participants can come and check in. We have a picture of one of our playtest labs there with all the shiny GPCs running, and a couple of our usability labs. I actually have a question. Has anybody ever done research with the Xbox team or as a participant in this room? I know it's a stretch. I'm all the way in Amsterdam. No, that's right. So you'll learn a little bit about it. I'll help you there. So who do we work with? That's who we are. We work with game studios, and these are the 23 game studios that make up Xbox Game Studios. And yes, of course, this happened. Activision Blizzard King is now part of the Xbox family, and we're not here to talk about this today, but I have to recognize that, yes, this is a thing. But it's exciting. We'll see what happens with that. But not only do we work with games, we work across Xbox content, hardware, and services, and developer experiences. Everything within the Xbox ecosystem comes through our team. So that's who we are. Let's talk about how we operate. So I'm going to start with a quick history about gaming user research, or UR, that's set up there, and how an operations team grew out of it. And a lot of the early research studies at outside of games at Microsoft focused on small sample methods like usability. And it's a traditional one-on-one experience between a researcher and a participant. And here you see what looks like an early version of Excel. You have a participant in the window in the video down below, working with what looks to be Clippy, skinned as a dinosaur. And Todd mentioned I've been here for 25 years. Yeah, I remember Clippy. What's not pictured is the researcher who's guiding the study, giving instructions, taking notes, running the video. It's something that she can do all by herself. And it's common practice at Microsoft still. We do it in gaming, and it's actually common in many industries around the world. And it requires a minimal operations team, if any at all. So when Microsoft started getting into games in the 90s, we applied the same usability concepts to gaming. So in this example, you could imagine a one-on-one researcher working with a participant to customize a player's helmet for their Spartan in Halo. So with games, these usability studies are important and insightful. We run these every week, but alone they were not enough. They couldn't answer some of the fundamental questions that game makers need, like, is this game fun? How's the pace? Is it challenging enough, or is it too challenging? For that, we needed a team. We set up a new type of study for larger sample methods, and that is when the playtest was born in 1998 for us. And this larger user research method has one researcher designing studies to work with multiple participants, and this required a research operations team to carry it out. So a playtest method is a method in which we bring in participants over the course of a day or two to come and play a game. And they play the game, they take a break, they fill out a survey, and they continue to play it. We collect all that data. Researcher does their PhD stuff, and they send it off to the studio to help improve the game, whatever goal they were trying to get out of it. This is done in a controlled environment, and it demands the resources and the professionalism of the research operations team, what I mentioned before, in terms of participant care and all the tools and stuff that we create and manage. These pictures are some people outside of our building in Microsoft and queuing up for a playtest, getting ready, and then down below, you see them seated in one of our playtest labs. They're playing the game, filling out the survey, and reporting data for us. The person walking in the middle there is one of our moderators on our research team, just making sure things are going right. Are they on track? If there's any technical issues, just making sure things go smoothly for them. These are participant care, is what we call it. But it didn't stop there for operations. It became clear pretty quickly that a research ops team was far more viable than just running playtests. And indeed, it was an extension of the UR's researchers' capabilities, and so we were able to apply disruption at scale with these resources. And I'm going to show you a couple examples. This first one is an event dialing tool that we developed in partnership between research and operations. The goal of this research was to understand how a particular live event was landing with the audience. So we recruit about 100 people to come watch this event, and they watch it with this tool overlaid on top of it. And in real time, they're able to adjust this slider back and forth to the right if they're really interested in what they're seeing on screen. They'll pass it to the left if they're not as interested. So we're recording all that information. Researcher takes it, creates the report. The information is fed back to the studio or to the event planning team. for feedback on this event and help them plan for future events. The second example was the team, dev team was interested in knowing how does latency affect the gaming experience, which actually is very pertinent to what we're talking about today when it comes to Parsec. Again, working with our research team, our operations team devised a system to measure latency down to the fraction of a second. And what you're seeing here on the blue line is a perceived latency of the participants. So these participants were not aware that we were in the background as we began to throttle their experience while they were playing a game. And you can see they were reporting back of their acceptance of it. And you can see somewhere between 30 and 60 milliseconds, it started going really bad for them. They didn't like their experience. And the other set of people that we tested were those who were aware of our throttling, how they accepted the latency that we were applying. So that's the green line, where as they played the game, we told them we began throttling, and they would report back when it started to affect their gameplay. And again, between 30 and 60 milliseconds, things started going poorly for them. And for this particular study, actually, we had about 1,200 participants come through over the course of a few weeks. So in the end, the data we gathered from this was given back to the team as part of the research report, and it helped them plan for their future project. So these are just a couple of examples of about how Xbox Research gives researchers the room to dream up these very creative and complicated, sophisticated studies, and how those researchers partner with the operations team to help carry them out. So we've covered the background of research, but we're here to talk about remote research. And I think, and that's how we pivoted from a 100% in-person research team to a hybrid in-person plus remote team. We can't talk about this without talking about the pandemic. Pre-2020, this was a typical day in our research labs. They were full, we were running studies, thousands of people came through our labs every year. It's really it's in a secure Microsoft building, which is great, and it's a consistent, predictable, supported environment. It's a perfect place for user research. But then, in March 2020, as happened to many people, Microsoft's offices were closed, flat out. Employees were not allowed in the buildings, certainly not external participants that come do play tests were allowed in the buildings. They were empty. Nobody was there. Our studies were not being run. It was, our systems were getting outdated, they were becoming unfunctional, and it was very frustrating for an operations team for sure. But it was even worse for our researchers. Losing this, participants physically interacting with product is fundamental to our business and their work with the game studio. So how are we supposed to run our core business without us being able to perform these play tests? And the business our partners didn't need to hear excuses. They literally were coming to us, where are my play tests? And like, oh, we can't run them. So losing this tool set for a researcher is like a developer not having access to their powerful dev machine. How can you be expected to do your job without it? This is a vital tool for our research team. So we couldn't run tests. We had no proven alternatives. Our world-class lab feelings certainly were waning. What do? Oh, Parsec. Now Parsec's here. Finally enters the story. It's a perfect time for the applause. So for the first time in 20 years, Xbox Research had to rethink how to carry out this fundamental part of our business. We had to evolve our playtest. And personally, this was one of the most exciting times of my career. Here we are with this huge problem and this big opportunity to embrace this new technology and work with a great new partner in Parsec. And we could prove something that could be groundbreaking for our business. But before I go on, I want to make sure that everybody here is on the same page about what Parsec is. So Vince, partner from Parsec, is going to give us a quick understanding of what that is. Thanks, Vince.
Hello, everyone. As Todd mentioned early on, I'm one of the Parsec team members, and I was kind of the boots on the ground with Brian and Dan and the research operations team to kind of spin this all up back in 2020. So what is Parsec? Parsec is a high-performance remote desktop application, and we're going to break that apart piece by piece. Remote desktop is pretty self-explanatory. It lets you access a remote computer from somewhere else. But what does high performance mean? It means different things to different people. For Parsec, it means high frame rate. For us, that's up to 240 frames per second. It means low latency, meaning that when you make an input, you don't really feel the lag. And then lastly, it's high fidelity, so that you can't really tell that you're playing on a remote machine. And that's the best feedback we can get from our customer base and our user base, is that when I'm playing via Parsec, I forget that I'm playing on a remote machine. And thankfully, we hear that all the time. And I think some of the future research that Brian's going to show will evidence that. So thank you very much.
Thanks, Vince. Thank you, Vince. So back to our story. Remember where we left off? Our labs were empty. No, didn't have any studies. What do we do? Well, later that year, 2020, we were working with, we heard about 343, who are the makers of Halo franchise. They were actually already partnering with Parsec. And our researchers embedded with that team brought this to us, the greater research team. And this promise of this high fidelity, low latency connection to remote PCs, oh, wait a minute, this might be something that we could use. And so the value prop was super clear to us. And so we, at that time, we started to build and test out Parsec. And this was a significant effort. Security and privacy. Microsoft is a big company, and gaming is just a small part of it. There's IP that exists all around Microsoft that we could not put at risk. And in gaming, the content we're talking about, what we test, it's unannounced, unreleased, and often unannounced content. In our buildings, it was easy to keep that safe because it was a controlled environment. We invited people in, content never left. But remote connections to that content, it was a big deal. And Vince, so we had a lot of security reviews, and a lot of them. And Vince was at a lot of them. Thank you, Vince. Quite frankly, the Parsec security model is pretty straightforward, and we went through all those security reviews and we passed them. Parsec was vetted, and we licensed Parsec and set it up in our labs. And we'll talk about the details about how we did that. But first, let's talk about our pilot and the first time we tried it. And it was in January of 2021, working with our researcher and the World's Edge studio for their game Age of Empires 4. They wanted to run a 50-person playtest. That's what we needed to do. Let's celebrate content a little bit, just for a moment. Age of Empires 4. It's a real-time strategy series of game. It was first released in 1997 by Ensemble Studios, and I think it's had 9 title releases since then with a host of expansion updates. It's published by Microsoft. And it's a history-based game, at time mythologically based. The goal is to gather resources. You build up towns and armories and homes, town centers, armies, all in an effort to do it before opponents elsewhere on the map are doing the same thing and try to destroy you. You want to destroy them first. On the personal level, back a long time ago, I used to actually play this game quite a bit, and I can still hear the sound of a battle starting in my head. I don't know if anybody's played this game. You know that sound? Yeah, you know that sound. Yes, thank you. You can build all kinds of stuff. You can build navies. You can build walls and fortifications to help your campaign or your multiplayer game. It's super fun. It's beautiful. The sound design is wonderful. The gameplay mechanics with the mouse and keyboard are spot on. It's a super fun series. So, yay, done celebrating the content. So we're back to so we ran the test in January 2021. First time running a remote test with Parsec, and it was a success. It was a huge success. The greatest thing, our playtest participants experienced that local gameplay feel while remote connecting to these remote PCs through Parsec. It was a really amazing moment for our team in that it was a moment in our business where we got a vote of confidence from our leadership and from the studios. And it showed them that Xbox Research was there stepping up to the moment to deal with this remote work situation and environment we were in. And again, it was all powered by Parsec. So let's go into some details about how that was done. This is where we had remote participants sitting at home on their PCs connecting to our lab PCs at Microsoft. So there's some requirements that our team was very familiar with them, but we had to rethink them for a bit for remote. We had to recruitment, we had to consider the people who could actually have the computers at home and could connect to us. We had to gather specific details from them so that we could control from a security point of view. They had to have reliable internet and broadband connections that were not going to be unpredictable for us because, again, we require a certain scrutiny and a level of quality for these tests in order to gather the correct data. Participant support and troubleshooting. So you remember that guy standing behind the playtest labs in one of my early pictures. They were there to help the participants stay on track. These participants were at home. We could keep the computers okay, but if they had problems, we had to rethink about how we dealt with support. And of course, in the end, it's all about seamless performant gameplay. The game studios we're partnering with expect nothing less. So I'm going to go into the setup of our system. Again, this was actually pretty familiar to us because we're actually very good at recruiting and setting up for playtests, but some things had to change for us. And about a week before the study starts, we collect information from participants. We screen them. For instance, if it was for Age of Empires, we might want to know if they're a real-time strategy game player. And just a little bit of questions like that to make sure they're a good fit for the study. But in this case, we had to collect for these remote studies, to collect a couple pieces of information that was unique and new to us. First one being their email address, the second one being their IP address. And the reason why we need that is because part of our security model, we had to apply their IP address to our firewall, so that allow list, so that we could control their entry. And also we had to ask them to create a Parsec account using that email address, so that later on, the day of the test, we send them an email to that Parsec account utilizing a feature of Parsec called the guest access credit, which is a temporary license for a user that exists for a couple days, and these participants could use that license to access our system. And here's the general diagram of what that circuit looks like for the on-premises remote playtest. So we have a remote participant up there clicking on an email they received from Parsec, utilizing the guest access credit that licenses their access to our system, at which point they hit our research lab and our firewall, verified by their IP address, they're able to get in, and once they're in, they access the high-performance relay and the lab PC at Microsoft, which is running the game that they are testing. So you have a remote participant sitting at home playing a game on one of our lab PCs. So for several months, we ran multiple tests like this. It actually was working fantastic. We leveraged this for play tests for other studios, and it was actually, our business was going again. But there's always something else. There was another ask that came from a game studio that actually went beyond the capabilities of what we were able to do here. But before I get there, I want to mention the performance. So for this, a remote participant connecting to our lab PCs, the network ping there is 23.28 milliseconds. In this example, I took it last week. This participant was about 15 miles from our campus. So, and we learned earlier that that's probably within the acceptable range of a good gaming experience. So, pretty good. So which leads us to the Azure remote play tests. And this was because we had a request from this other partner that we could not support in our system. And this is a remote participant, the same participant sitting at home, but not connecting to our Redmond or our campus PCs, connecting to Azure VMs. So another studio partner came to us with this that fed this entire process, and their requests required 60 concurrent players to participate in a test. this was beyond what we were capable of in our lab. We didn't have that many PC resources available to us. This was a really cool opportunity for us to think a little bigger and to set us up for the future, so we jumped on it. There were challenges with this one. It required some cloud computing expertise that our team did not have. Yes, we were experienced in Azure, but nothing like this. Nobody in the world has done this, a playtest of this, like this, a system like this on Azure. So there was no precedent for us to figure that out. And we needed to figure out how to deliver the same kind of security safeguards and promise to Microsoft and our partners that we do in our physical labs. But now we had to do it in the cloud. And we did it. It was, and yeah, there's a time in there, security issues we had to go through in there. It took months, but we were able to spin up 60 VMs in an Azure circuit in Azure, basically a virtual lab, and run these and enable us to be able to run these tests. And one of the greatest things, we'll touch about in a minute too, is that we can replicate this on any data center. So the Azure remote playtest requirements, the slide may look the same because I think it is exactly the same, but that's the point. We still have the same requirements. It's still a playtest, but there were some things that we had to think about. Obviously, there was a new security model we had to consider. There's a couple new pieces of information we need to gather from them. We had the participant support and troubleshooting. Now, not only do we have to support a remote participant, but now we have to support a remote VM. The content is running on a VM that we can't reboot and install right there. So we had to rethink about how we support and troubleshoot that. All solvable, but it was something we had to think about. And of course, seamless, performant gameplay had to be there. So this looks actually about the same as it did before, which is good because again, we're reusing something that we're very, very good at. The biggest difference is the week before the study in the collect phase, you see there is a zip code that we are gathering from our participants. And we need this because we have to consider the proximity of the participant to the data center because there's a speed of light issue here. If they're too far away from this data center, then they're going to experience latency and also unacceptable gameplay performance. But otherwise, the process is the same. We have an IP, collect their IP, we add it to an allow list, they set up their Parsec account, day of the test, we send the invite, they click the link, utilize the guest access credit, and get into our system. So this is the Parsec version of what I showed earlier. And what you have here is your remote participant up there clicking that link, utilizing their GAC, entering our Azure data center, and instead of a firewall here, it's a network security group that their IP address is on. And like before, hit the HPR and the gaming VM ultimately, which is hosting the game and running the game. So you have a remote participant playing this game that's sitting on an Azure VM and experiencing the full promise that Parsec offers, this high fidelity, low latency gameplay. And to do this, we didn't need to purchase a bunch of gaming PCs. We just spun up some VMs. Comparatively, it was, and also we didn't have to have the lab space to do it either. It was a model that is scalable. So here's the ping information for this center. So for this system, you see the network 14.1 milliseconds response to this to our Azure VM. And that sample, which again I took last week on this one as well, they were about 150 miles away from the data center. It was even better than hitting our GPCs. So very acceptable ping rate for quality gameplay. One big difference here is that we get to benefit from the scalability of Azure. And you can see in this example, we have the West US data center and the East US data center. We're able to replicate this Azure circuit in any data center we want. And this is a game changer for us. The way I explained Xbox Research earlier, our entire history has revolved around having participants showing up inside our buildings, Microsoft campus. Now we can scale across the nation or anywhere a data center exists potentially. And it even allows us, not only from the scalability of filling diverse sets of demographics, but also we run tests with disabled people who cannot otherwise make it into our buildings. So they're able to participate in our studies and feed our system. And to take it a step further, we're even able to run a single concurrent test being filled with participants from multiple data centers at one time. So we can run one test with people from all around the country. So it's pretty amazing stuff. And again, Parsec enables all that stuff for us. So as we engage with studios, we certainly get skepticism. We say, oh yeah, we can do it. We're going to run it through Parsec. Yeah, there's some believe it's too good to be true, quite frankly, and it's legitimate concerns. They say things like they're worried about security, about the remote connections. They're worried about the fidelity of the gameplay when you play through a Parsec app and remotely, or that their games won't be as perceived as fun because of these performance issues that might surface from this experience in this network. Or they're concerned that the VM spec that they see on Azure, that their game won't run on that VM spec. And what we do is we acknowledge it. Yes, those are good concerns, but you need to try it first. And what we do is we were able to quickly spin up a couple virtual machines for them, put a game on it, give them access and give the controller in their hand or a mouse and keyboard, and they try it themselves. And undoubtedly, inevitably, we actually do wind up working with those studios. And once they see it and feel it, they become believers. It's amazing how you just have to feel it in order to believe it. It's very true. And then we wind up running their play tests. But the skepticism doesn't necessarily stop there. Even in our own research team, we wanted to prove to arm a group of researchers with who want to back this kind of system, and as they engage with their studio partners, so they can be proponents of our abilities in these playtest scenarios. So we asked the question ourselves: does the use of Parsec impact playtest scores? And the good news is we're a research team, so we know how to run research tests, and we understand the latency or the impact of latency on gameplay. So we did that research. We took 500 participants across 14 studies, and in that we found that fun, graphics, and controls, which are three fundamental parts of a good gameplay experience, we found that there was little difference between those scores when compared to in-person labs and Parsec remote studies. In addition, we also found there's no effect of connection latency on the scores either. Whether they had a lower ping or higher ping, the scores wound up being very similar. So overall, the investigation suggested that the Parsec-driven studies produce comparable data in our playtest reports as our on-premise studies. So we're able to prove to ourselves that Parsec remote studies were, a really viable method for us. And there were some lessons that we had to learn, and that came in the form of challenges, and I want to talk through these a little bit. We had to rethink the study moderation, and I mentioned that a bit before, in that now we went from being able to completely take care of our participants in person and our machines to now having these remote participants and these remote machines. We are back to running on-site studies, so we're able to get back into our buildings, and we can access our remote PCs, our local PCs, but we still use remote participants in many cases. The scarcity of the Azure VM SKUs is a big deal. We have to find a SKU that works for us. We needs to have a certain graphics processing power, and those are not all available on every data center. Not every data center is created equal. So there's a challenge there to make sure that if we want to have consistent these consistent SKUs, that they're available on all the data centers that we want to run on. Also, those eventually are going to need to be and do need to be upgraded, just like any gaming PC. So we're going to have to find a new SKU that has a better processing power, GPU power, so that we can keep up with the advancements in gaming. See issue number 2. Oh no, we need to upgrade. Is it available on the data centers that we want to use? Those are real problems. It's a fun one. The complexity of automation, again, it's a cloud computing learning curve that our team needs to go through. Some of it is a little bit taxing on the team. So as we continue to learn, automation is really important part of this system. Parsec is not available on Xbox consoles. All the tests I'm talking about are on PCs, nothing on a console. And it's a big gap. We're a platform company, and we can't run remote tests on these today. And then the dependence on the home user's broadband connection is something as well. We used to run connection tests as part of our system, and it's such a variable depending on neighborhoods and people's homes, different countries. So it's a challenge, and it's something that we have to face. I want to try to bring it all back to here. To you all, because I'm talking about my world and playtests, and I don't know how many people here do or do not run playtests, but let's talk about whether it's a good fit for your team, because there are some other scenarios that are really important beyond the playtest. So the fact is remote work is universal. These little pins here actually represent where we have researchers on Xbox Research distributed across the Western Hemisphere, and your teams may be similar. Playtesting, these core scenarios are the 3 core scenarios that I've seen used at Microsoft. Playtesting is the one I've gone into details here today. And if you need to diversify your participant pool to find testers outside your area, it's a really good reason to think about trying this. Or if you don't have the lab space or the gaming PC resources available, and you can work with cloud computing, that is another good reason to consider that. The remote connections to powerful PCs and the design dev remote collaboration, those are really the core scenarios at Microsoft. That's done beyond our team with in the different game studios. It's a very powerful Parsec scenario. And then these other scenarios are just team culture events and build reviews and things like that. There are these are all real use cases, that are being used real. But those 3 are the primary ones with a few extras. So it's a two-way street, though. We've been able to have, we being Xbox Research, we have some great positive impact on the Parsec development process. Something we've been screaming about since the day we started working with them is we want microphone pass-through, and that is game chat happening through the Parsec experience. And Parsec being the gems they are, they released an awesome update and did the work. And a couple months ago, they released microphone pass-throughs so that it opens up some multiplayer gaming experience testing opportunities for us. So it's awesome. Also, some UI experience updates for us, watermarking for security, and the new gamepad support drivers. It's all been stuff that Parsec has been fantastic at. And we benefit each other. Because in the end, these are the amount of studies that we have run in Xbox Research with these using Parsec. We've run 45 studies during this time across 10 different studios with over 2,000 participants. And these 10 studios are specifically the ones who we worked with as part of our playtest. There are actually more studios in Xbox game studios using Parsec for those other development scenarios that I talked about. So in conclusion, our partnership with Parsec it's been incredible for our business and for Xbox Research. And this technology has been instrumental to expanding our listening systems beyond what we ever thought we could do or whatever we plan to do. And it helps us carry forward our mission at Xbox, and that is to bring the joy and community of gaming to everyone on the planet. Finally, here's some links for some more information that you can take with you. This is the Parsec case study I mentioned at the very beginning. If you want to learn more about our team and Xbox Research, here we are. And then if you want to sign up actually to be a playtester, you can do that too. Anybody can sign up. It's good times.
Do it.
Yeah. But that's what I have for you. And I want to thank you for taking the time to come watch this. I appreciate it. So
Let's thank Brian.
Great to have you.
Thanks, Brian.